Mama Ajoke was known throughout the quiet village of Adumo as a kind-hearted woman. Her back was slightly bent with age, and her hands carried the marks of years spent tilling the earth, raising livestock, and caring for her family. After her husband passed away, she poured all her love into raising her only surviving child, Folarin. He was once a sweet boy who clung to her wrapper and brought her palm fruit from the bush. But now, Folarin was different. Ever since he inherited his late father's land and started making money, Folarin had changed. He wore fine clothes, drove around in a noisy second-hand car, and often laughed too loudly in the company of strangers. He rarely looked his mother in the eye. In the same home, Mama Ajoke, once filled with stories, singing, and prayer, silence now ruled. Folarin saw her as a burden, just an old woman who had outlived her usefulness. He no longer brought her palm oil from the market. Instead, he barked orders and rolled his eyes whenever she tried to speak. Neighbors noticed the shift. Mama Ajoke, once vibrant and respected, now walked slowly past the same people who used to call her Mama Courage. She kept her head down, hiding the sorrow that had begun to live behind her eyes. The boy she sacrificed everything for had grown into a man who forgot her sacrifices. In Folarin's eyes, wealth meant freedom from poverty, from his past, and heartbreakingly, from his own mother. Mama Ajoke still cooked his meals and swept his compound, but the warmth between them had turned cold, and she didn't know that worse was yet to come. When Folarin's father passed away, the elders of the village handed over the land and the small cocoa business to him. It was tradition, and everyone expected him to follow in his father's footsteps with honor. At first, Folarin seemed grateful. He walked with pride, thanking people, calling his mother Mama Mi with respect. But the moment the money started flowing, everything changed. He no longer walked to the market. He sent boys to run his errands. He stopped greeting elders properly, acting as though he was now too big to kneel. The cocoa business grew quickly, and with each extra bag sold, Folarin's chest grew wider. He built a tall fence around the family house and started telling people he planned to move to the city soon. But in that same house, Mama Ajoke still slept on the same bamboo mat she had shared with her late husband for years. Folarin bought himself a flat-screen TV, but didn't replace his mother's torn wrapper or fix the leaking roof over her room. The more money he made, the more ashamed he seemed of Mama Ajoke. Her simple clothes, her village accent, the way she prayed loudly at night. It all irritated him. He started ignoring her greetings, calling her that old woman when speaking to his friends. If she reminded him to eat or prayed for him too long, he would snap at her, saying she should rest and stop pretending to be important. He even told a neighbor once, "If not for my name, nobody would know that woman exists." Those words spread like wildfire. Mama Ajoke heard them, and though her heart broke, she stayed quiet. After all, a mother never stops loving, even when her child forgets who he used to be. The village square was filled with people that afternoon. The elders sat in their usual spots under the big mango tree. Women pounded yam in the background, and children played with dusty feet. It was supposed to be a peaceful meeting about the harvest festival, but Folarin had other plans. He stood up suddenly, his voice loud, cutting through the chatter. People turned to look. He pointed at Mama Ajoke, who sat quietly, with her wrapper neatly tied, and her walking stick resting beside her. Then, without shame, he said the unthinkable. "This woman is the reason my business is failing," Folarin shouted. "She brings bad luck. Every night she mutters things to herself, burning incense and disturbing the spirits. I've had enough." Gasps filled the air. Some mouths dropped open. Others whispered, too stunned to believe what they were hearing. Mama Ajoke tried to speak, but her voice trembled. "Folarin, I am your mother," she said softly, but he waved her off like a stranger begging for coins. "You're not my mother anymore," he snapped. "You're a curse." The elders demanded he take back his words, but he was lost in pride and anger. Without a second thought, Folarin grabbed her small bag of wrappers and old slippers and threw them into the dirt. "Leave my house today. Go back to wherever you came from." Tears rolled down Mama Ajoke's face as she stood slowly, her body shaking from more than just age. The same people who once praised her now looked away in silence. No one moved to help. She walked away from the gathering with nothing but her dignity, her tears, and a heart that carried 1,000 memories of a son who once called her his everything. The sun was hot, and Mama Ajoke's feet were swollen from walking all day with no place to rest. Dust clung to her wrapper, and her mouth was dry. She hadn't eaten since morning, and her legs trembled beneath her. She had nowhere to go. Her son had thrown her out, and no one in the village dared to take her in, afraid of being accused too. She found a small spot under a dying tree beside the dusty road that led to the next village. She sat, then slowly lay down, her head spinning. Her eyes blinked slowly until everything went black. A black SUV came to a sudden stop nearby. Zuberi, a young man in a clean white shirt, stepped out quickly. He had just come from a charity project in the next town when he saw the old woman lying by the roadside. He rushed to her, knelt beside her, and gently touched her forehead. "Mama, Mama, can you hear me?" he called, his voice full of concern. His driver brought water, and Zuberi poured a little into her mouth. Slowly, Mama Ajoke's eyes fluttered open. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. No one had spoken to her with kindness in days. She looked up at the man's face, young, warm, unfamiliar. "Don't worry," he said gently. "You're safe now." Without asking too many questions, Zuberi helped her into the car. He didn't care about the rumors or her dusty clothes. All he saw was a tired, broken woman who needed help. As the car drove off toward his home in the city, Mama Ajoke leaned back, a single tear sliding down her cheek, not from pain this time, but from the strange feeling of being cared for again. Days passed, and Mama Ajoke slowly regained her strength in Zuberi's beautiful home. The house was large, filled with soft rugs and the smell of fresh flowers. But more than that, it was filled with peace. For the first time in years, she was treated with kindness. Zuberi made sure she ate well, had clean clothes, and saw a doctor. He often sat beside her, listening to her stories about village life, old songs, and memories she thought she had forgotten. There was something about the way he looked at her, a deep respect, a strange sense of connection. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned orange, Mama Ajoke sat with Zuberi in the garden. She looked at his face, his smile, the scar above his eyebrow. It reminded her of her daughter, Abeni, who had passed away in pain so many years ago during childbirth. She had never known what became of the baby. The father had taken him away, and no word came after that. She gathered courage and asked softly, "Zuberi, who was your mother?" Zuberi looked surprised. "Her name was Abeni," he said slowly. "She died when I was born. My father moved to the city with me. I grew up there, always wondering about my roots." Mama Ajoke gasped, her hand covering her mouth as tears filled her eyes. Her heart beat loudly in her chest. "Abeni was my daughter." The air stood still. Zuberi stared at her, shocked. Slowly, realization sank in. You're my grandmother?" They sat in silence, tears streaming down both their faces. After all these years, fate had brought them back together. The woman thrown away by her son had been rescued by the very blood she never knew survived, her own grandson. One morning, while Mama Ajoke was folding her wrapper in the guest room Zuberi had given her, she opened the small cloth bag she always kept close. Inside it was a rusted locket and a faded letter, her most precious treasures. The locket had belonged to her daughter Abeni, a gift she had worn every day until the moment she died. Inside the locket was a tiny photo of Abeni as a teenager and a note she had written shortly before giving birth. In the note, Abeni had written, If I do not survive, tell my son I love him. His name is Zuberi. Mama Ajoke stared at the note, her hands trembling. That name, that same name. Her heart started to race. She hadn't shown anyone the letter in years, not even Folarin, but now she felt something stronger than coincidence. She clutched the locket tightly and stepped out into the hallway, searching for Zuberi. He was in the living room, adjusting his shirt collar in the mirror. As he turned, Mama Ajoke's eyes widened. Hanging from his neck was a familiar pendant, a small silver lion with a ruby in its eye, the exact pendant Abeni's fiancée had worn the day he came to ask for her hand. Zuberi, she said slowly, her voice shaking. Where did you get that pendant? He looked down, surprised. My father gave it to me before he passed away, said it was the last thing he had from my mother. Mama Ajoke didn't speak. She just walked forward, hands open, showing the old locket and the letter. Zuberi took them, read the note, and looked at the picture. Silence filled the room, and then, without a word, he dropped to his knees, wrapped his arms around her waist, and whispered, "Grandma." Zuberi could not stop thinking about everything Mama Ajoke had suffered. The woman who gave him life through his mother had been mistreated, insulted, and left to die by her own son. He felt pain in his chest, just imagining the nights she spent alone, cold, and heartbroken. Now that he knew the truth, he was determined to make things right, not just for her, but for the memory of the mother he never knew. Without hesitation, Zuberi made a decision. He arranged for Mama Ajoke to leave the village behind and move into his mansion in Lakiba, a wealthy and peaceful district in the city. The house stood tall with white walls, green gardens, and sparkling fountains. When Mama Ajoke arrived, she couldn't believe her eyes. "Is this truly where I will stay?" she whispered, holding tightly to her faded bag. Zuberi smiled and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "You are not a burden here. This is your home now." He prepared a room just for her, filled with soft pillows, warm blankets, and framed photos of her daughter and of him as a child. He hired staff to care for her and ensured that she had everything she needed. But more than gifts, he gave her what she had been denied for so long: respect, love, and peace. Zuberi also held a special dinner and introduced her to his friends, calling her the Queen of My Heart and telling everyone the story of how fate brought them together. Tears filled Mama Ajoke's eyes, not from sorrow but from joy. In her old age, she had finally found honor. Zuberi held her hand and whispered, "I promise, Grandma, I will restore your dignity, no matter what it takes." Zuberi could not stop thinking about everything Mama Ajoke had suffered. The woman who gave him life through his mother had been mistreated, insulted, and left to die by her own son. He felt pain in his chest, just imagining the nights she spent alone, cold, and heartbroken. Now that he knew the truth, he was determined to make things right, not just for her, but for the memory of the mother he never knew. Without hesitation, Zuberi made a decision. He arranged for Mama Ajoke to leave the village behind and move into his mansion in Lakiba, a wealthy and peaceful district in the city. The house stood tall with white walls, green gardens, and sparkling fountains. When Mama Ajoke arrived, she couldn't believe her eyes. "Is this truly where I will stay?" she whispered, holding tightly to her faded bag. Zuberi smiled and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "You are not a burden here. This is your home now." He prepared a room just for her, filled with soft pillows, warm blankets, and framed photos of her daughter and of him as a child. He hired staff to care for her and ensured that she had everything she needed. But more than gifts, he gave her what she had been denied for so long: respect, love, and peace. Zuberi also held a special dinner and introduced her to his friends, calling her the Queen of My Heart and telling everyone the story of how fate brought them together. Tears filled Mama Ajoke's eyes, not from sorrow but from joy. In her old age, she had finally found honor. Zuberi held her hand and whispered, "I promise, Grandma, I will restore your dignity, no matter what it takes." Back in the village, Folarin's world was falling apart. The same pride that once filled his chest now poisoned his business. He had pushed away his mother, ignored wise counsel, and surrounded himself with greedy friends who only cared about quick profits. Soon, everything began to crumble. The farm his father left him dried up from neglect. His once booming palm oil business was under investigation for fraud. Workers walked away, suppliers stopped calling, and debt collectors began knocking at his gate. Folarin was drowning, but his pride wouldn't let him show it. Desperate, he decided to look for help in the city. He made a list of powerful businessmen and sent out meeting requests. One day, he got a response. A meeting had been confirmed with a wealthy investor in Lakiba, known only as Mr. Z. Folarin didn't care who the man was. All he needed was money to fix everything. When the day came, Folarin wore his best suit, trying to hide the worry in his eyes. He entered the tall glass building with hope in his heart, holding on to the belief that one handshake could change his fate. A secretary led him to a boardroom with polished floors and golden curtains. He sat down, heart pounding. Moments later, the door opened, and in walked Zuberi. Folarin's face turned pale. He recognized him from somewhere but couldn't place it right away. Then he saw her, Mama Ajoke, walking beside Zuberi, dressed in fine clothes, standing tall with grace. Folarin's jaw dropped. What was his mother doing here, and why was she smiling like a queen? Before he could speak, Zuberi sat down and said calmly, "Let's talk business, Mr. Folarin. Us." The next day, Zuberi called Mama Ajoke to get ready for something important. She was nervous but curious. He helped her put on beautiful royal robes, bright fabrics embroidered with gold threads that shimmered under the light. Around her neck hung a necklace studded with precious stones. Her hands, once worn and rough from years of hard work, were now adorned with delicate bracelets. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. For the first time in decades, she felt like a queen. Zuberi escorted her to the city's grand boardroom, where his company's most powerful business leaders gathered. The room was filled with polished wooden tables, giant screens, and men and women in sharp suits. The air was thick with the sound of serious voices and the shuffle of papers. Then, the doors swung open, and Mama Ajoke entered, flanked by 2 tall security guards, and followed by top executives. The entire room fell silent. Folarin sat at the far end of the room, staring in disbelief. His eyes widened as he saw his mother, once thrown out and mocked, standing tall and proud like a queen in front of all these powerful people. The golden robe, the jeweled necklace, even the confident way she walked. It was a shock he could hardly believe. Whispers spread around the room as business elites nodded respectfully toward her. Zuberi introduced her as the matriarch of the family and a partner in the company's future plans. Mama Ajoke's presence was no longer that of a poor, abandoned old woman, but of a respected leader. Folarin's face burned with shame and confusion. The tables had turned, and now it was clear. His mother was not only alive but ruling with grace and strength, while he sat humbled in the shadows. Days after the shocking betrayal, Amma surprised everyone by returning to the wedding hall, the very place where her dreams had been crushed. She walked in quietly at first, steady on her own 2 feet, her face calm but fierce. The hall was still decorated with flowers and ribbons, but the joyful buzz was gone. Guests whispered nervously as she made her way to the center, where a microphone was waiting. Taking a deep breath, Amma lifted the mic and looked straight at the crowd. Her voice was steady but powerful as she began to speak. She told the story no one wanted to hear: the secret poisoning, the cruel plan hatched by Kwesi and his mother, and how she had been betrayed by the very people who promised to love and protect her. Every word struck like a thunderbolt, silencing the room. Faces turned pale, whispers stopped, and eyes filled with shock and shame. Kwesi tried to speak, to defend himself, but Amma held up her hand, her eyes blazing. "This is the truth," she said, "and I won't let anyone hide it." One by one, guests began to leave, their faces full of disgust and disbelief. The wedding that was meant to be a celebration had become a public revelation of cruelty and lies. But Amma didn't care. This was her moment to reclaim her story. Months later, Amma was no longer the broken bride. She stood tall and proud at the opening of her new women's clinic, a place dedicated to helping women like her, survivors of betrayal, abuse, and injustice. Dr. Ni Ado stood beside her, a symbol of hope and healing. Together, they promised to protect and empower women who deserved better. Amma's story wasn't just about heartbreak. It was about strength, courage, and rising from the ashes to build a brighter future. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales. Remember, true strength is rising above betrayal and standing tall in your truth.